understand why that would be like a goal. Like why, as a man,
Yeah.
You would want a woman who you would have control over. Like what's the fun in that, frankly? Like I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I and maybe I'm a different breed. I don't know. I don't and again, it's not about, oh, I'm better or worse than anyone else. It's not about that. I'm just curious. Like what
Yeah.
is the I mean, so, but let me ask it, and maybe you feel the same way. I don't know, because it strikes me just from some of our conversations and learning about your backstory and even things in high school. Like, it doesn't strike me that this was ever something that would be in your in your horizon, like in your worldview, as like, this is what I want. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't want to presume. Maybe you were very different in middle school. I have no idea. But it just, that's not the energy I've ever gotten in our
Yeah.
conversations and from knowing you. Um, and so I guess I would ask, like, why do you think? Because there are absolutely women, because I've seen, Reddit threads, I've seen, different posts about it where, from guys like, hey, I tried to be, uh, I was vulnerable, and my girlfriend, my wife, my significant other, whatever the case was, just sort of like hammered me with it. And so now I, like made fun of, like hurt me with it, and things of that nature, So clearly there are women out there who think weakness, showing any kind of weakness, having a man having emotions is wrong, is feminine, is not masculine, and is not what they want. And I guess I'm curious, from your perspective as a woman, someone who, why is that? Like,
Yeah.
what do you think about it? Like, I'd love to get your take on it.
Yeah. I think, one, to speak to the first part of what you were talking about, it confounds me too, because it's something that it almost reminds me of, like, there's a piece of it that reminds me of narcissism, where it's like, when there is someone who, like, truly suffers from, like, narcissistic personality disorder and is very disordered in their thinking about themselves and how they approach relationships, that comes from deep, deep, deep insecurity built out of childhood trauma and chemical imbalances in your brain. But it always comes from insecurity, and that's why all of the methods to deal with a narcissist are about gray rock, right? You can't give them something to latch onto to hurt you, but you also can't inflate their ego, because that allows them to further justify their behavior without actually looking at the root cause of insecurity underneath, to then be able to hopefully get treatment in a way that is healing and growth oriented one way. The other thing, that this idea of men not wanting an equal partner, and it's like, why would you want someone who basically is subservient to you? Like, what's attractive to you about that? The other thing that it makes me think of is like middle school mean girl behavior. In middle school, there is this thing that I've experienced. I'm sure other women out there will absolutely know exactly what I'm talking about, and I'm sure most humans, men, women, non-binary, experience this, where when you're younger and there's a girl who is pretty, she's smart, she's nice, she's good at sports, and it just makes you mad. You just don't like her, because how dare she be pretty, smart, nice, and talented? Like, what the hell? I hate you. I hate you. How dare you? And in middle school, that deep insecurity in me would say, well, there has to be something wrong, and she actually really isn't that nice, and, I'm smarter than her, or whatever. You kind of jump there.
Mhm.
As you get older and you realize, no, she just is pretty and smart and nice and talented. But that makes me want to be her friend. That's the type of woman I want to surround myself with, because that's the type of woman I want to be. And the only way that I've been able to do that as a woman, and to say, like, to grow from being 12 and deeply insecure into now an adult who is like, oh, that's a badass woman, I want her on my team, right? As opposed to, I need to tear her down. And I think that there's something similar that happens there where it's like this is when men see badass women, there's a similar feeling of threat that can come in for some reason that again has to be rooted in insecurity, but I think the rational response from a healed, well-adjusted individual is I want them on my team, right? And so I think that that really is the shift there. Of course, there's so much more nuance, but I just always have to go back to insecurity for men, which again is largely due to the patriarchy telling them they can't be vulnerable and heal. And then to speak to women who further the negative patterns of patriarchy and don't create spaces for men to be vulnerable with them. On one hand, I think that stems from internalized misogyny on the women's part a lot of the time. You know, like women aren't a monolith and aren't all perfectly healed and perfect arbiters of feminism and, treating men non-toxically as well. And so I think part of that is just the fear of, you know, there is something too if you've been told your whole life a man is supposed to protect you and then you see a chink in the armor that it could create a fear response really easily in a woman. But that's why it's so important for us as women to actively choose what we want in a man and create a space for vulnerability. I think also there's a way to start to shift these behaviors internal to a relationship that isn't necessarily out of the blue, you just break down in front of your partner. Not to say that that's necessarily what's happening every single time that a man feels like he was vulnerable and then gets beaten down because of it from a woman partner. But I think that there could theoretically sometimes be this is the first time a man has ever been vulnerable. And it could be a lot for that partner to hold and carry. And that partner may not be equipped to hold your vulnerability in that moment, whether because they have never seen this from you before, and any dramatic change from your life partner is going to be shocking and is going to be different, but also they may theoretically, if the woman's going through something of their own at that time, they may not have the bandwidth to deal with something. And I could absolutely see a man saying something that's a really big deal to him and his partner not thinking that that's a really big deal, but maybe had a bad day, being like, yeah, okay, honey, and just moving on. And then that just absolutely shutting the man down. And they just didn't, it was just a misfire, right? So I think there's a lot of nuance there. But again, that's why it's so important that this starts from the beginning of a relationship. And if you're in a relationship and you're actively trying to repair some of these patterns that maybe you as a couple, like if there's a couple listening to this right now, have fallen into the past, and now you're trying to be more feminist as a partnership, like really talking about it. And even though this is like maybe an added layer of vulnerability, as the man, say like, hey, what I'm about to say is hard for me. And like, make it known that you're asking something of your partner right then that is space for your vulnerability so that they know, and also set yourself up for success in that if you're trying to be vulnerable, maybe not in the middle of like your kid's birthday party, maybe not after they got in an argument with their boss that day, the obvious things that I'll just throw out there too. Again, not to excuse women who are doing this, because I'm sure it happens plenty of times where women are settling into their insecurity and fear-based trauma responses as well, where they do just smack down the vulnerability. But I would say they're operating out of the same internalized misogyny that the men are that are now trying to unwork this. And that's why you have to, in a partnership, undo it as a partnership.
I love that it becomes an us issue versus a your issue or my issue, which,
Yeah.
I mean, again, I think we're just talking kind of wholesale and common sense sort of relational things, right? Like if
Yeah.
you're with a person, really, again, it's not about making. I read something on somewhere Reddit probably about you know this you know some people want to make their problems our problems, but your problems stay your problems. So my problems are our problems, but your problems are your problems. And
Mm,
I think that is a trap. I mean, both men and women. I
yeah.
don't fall into. But again, what I'm hearing from you is hey, let's have a real conversation about this. Can we really just be real? And I think maybe that authenticity is I mean, I guess I can see that if you've built your whole relationship on this false premise of, you know, it can be very, very difficult to break away from it. I suppose.
Yeah. And I think that would take strength on both